Welcome, Vnetwork Radio listeners. Welcome. We are live right here on the Vnetwork Radio network, and we are live here with aspiring author. I tell you, Mr. Alan T. Black, best-selling Christian author, international Christian blogger, and song lyricist. He has a website, alantblack.com, and also you can get his new book online, and we'll show you the uh, cover of the book here, In the Spirit Intended by Alan T. Black. I tell you, he's international right here on the V Network Radio, and we're so honored to have him on tonight to be with us, and he's here live. All right, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, Pastor. Thank you for the introduction. I had to stop and think, is he talking about me? 'Cause I couldn't believe I'm hearing all that, but it just goes to show that,
Yes.
God will move you in a direction that you had no clue was coming. No clue.
Uh huh. Yes, I tell you, we sent the flyer out, and we had got so many inboxes and said, when is he going to be on? We want to, listen to what he has to say, and talk about his new book and that you have out now. And so we're here to go over the entire interview, and we're going to, give it over to you.
Well, I want to thank you, first of all, for the honor to be with you this evening. I'm very, very appreciative of having the opportunity, because I know you have a lot of people that you can interview and everything. And so, again, I just want to thank you.
Hmm.
To the listening audience, I hope that whatever I share is a word of encouragement to everybody, and that they will take to heart something that really means something to them, and something that speaks to their spirit. I guess if we want to go back to the beginning, I've had people ask me, how did you get to this point in terms of reaching the level of being a Christian author and being a best-selling author? And as I'm looking back, Pastor, I'm really beginning to really re-examine the pathway that I followed to get to this point. Now, we're going to establish something right up front immediately, okay?
Hmm.
So everybody's looking at me. If they're looking at me on Facebook, they're like, "You got a lot of gray hair up there." I earned my gray hair, Pastor, okay? Let me just
All right.
make that perfectly clear. I'm just keeping it real with everybody. So
All right.
I'm 65 years old, so if nothing else, if you get nothing out of this tonight, just remember the fact that there is no age limit. There's no age requirement for what God calls you to do. Always keep that in mind. So, trying to go back to the beginning, my writing career actually began probably back in 75. So that's been what, 25, 45 years, something like that.
Hmm.
And so that's where it really began in terms of being a lyricist for songs, for music. Growing up, I had a tremendous passion for music.
Hmm.
And so I was that guy that I just wanted to hear what the storyline was in each song. And why was it saying that? What was really the meaning, or was there a meaning inside the meaning? And so I grew up in that era in the 60s of the Motowns, the James Brown, and all of that type of music. And also diversity in music in terms of rock and roll and things like that. Because back in the 60s, where I'm at in this part of the country, we did not have black radio stations, okay? So you got to
Hmm.
pick it up here and there as you go. So it kind of gave me an eclectic mix of music background. So to kind of fast forward to 75, I had always had this dream of really doing lyrics for a song. And I'll never forget, Pastor, I remember I went to see my professor, and he was
Hmm.
like my mentor. And I showed him my first set of lyrics. And I was so scared because I was thinking he was just going to laugh at me and throw me out of his office.
Hmm.
But I remember he looked at it and he said, you've got a lot of potential here in terms of being a writer. He said, what you want to do is to continue to pursue that, because he said, you never know where this is going to lead.
Hmm.
And I think what's important about that story is that one thing I realize now from what he was telling me, it's important that we keep in mind that when we come across certain people in the course of our pathway, they have the capacity, Pastor, to either speak words of encouragement into your life, or they can discourage you and kind of stop you on your pathway to what your dream is or what your calling is.
That's
So
right.
I think it's important that we always kind of temper who it is that we listen to, because he could have very well have said, well, you might as well forget it because you don't have any talent. And I'm 20 years old at that time, and that would have been enough to make me just stop and never really go any further. But because of his encouragement
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that he was my mentor, it kind of planted in me that seed that, hey, this is a dream that I could see maybe come true. And so, really, from that point on in '75, I just continued to write as a lyricist in collaboration with musicians with different types of music. I've done
Right.
collaborations in R&B, in gospel,
All
soul.
right.
I've even got some stuff now that I've collaborated with in country, believe it or not,
All
that's
right.
getting airplay over in Europe right now. And so
Nice.
for me, that's really where the genesis of my writing career began, in
Mm-hmm.
'75 going forward. And so what happened was, and I didn't know this was kind of laying the foundation, kind of going to what you were saying about a sermon you mentioned you got coming up,
Yes.
about a foundation, because when it got to about 2015, I had retired by that time, so I was just kind of working part time and just kind of keeping myself busy and everything, because I'm not that person who's just going to sit at home all day
Mm-hmm.
and just watch TV. I think that's not very healthy. I feel like we have to keep our minds engaged on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how you say stay stimulated and you continue to grow. But what happened was in 2015, I'll never forget this. The part-time job I have is in the morning, like from 6 in the morning until about noon or so.
Mm-hmm.
So between 6 and 8 in the morning, Pastor, it's really slow. I wasn't really doing anything. So I'm not that guy who's online reading gossip stuff online or playing games on my computer or on my phone.
Right.
So that just didn't really engage me. But what began to happen in probably I'm going to say, early summer of 2015, I just began to really kind of just, I guess I'm just going to call it freestyling. And I just started writing down some different thoughts and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I wound up just kind of developing some things in terms of my writing that kind of grew into me becoming an author as such.
Right.
And let me share this with you, with the audience. My background in terms of being a writer in this arena was non existent. I had no experience in this whatsoever. And so I remember after I'd written like three of my first essays in my first book called Here I Am Lord, and I released that in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
But back in 2015, I had written like three of these, and I didn't really know what was going on, because I was writing, and when I would finish up like one of the essays, Pastor,
Mm-hmm.
I would take a break and maybe come back and read it maybe about 10 minutes later. I could not remember what I had written.
Wow.
I could not. And to be honest with you and the audience, it scared me. It really did, because I had never experienced anything like that, where you're writing and then you don't remember what you just wrote.
Wow.
And so I was wondering, okay, is something wrong with me? What's happening here?
Mm-hmm.
I had no experience with that. So I wound up talking to a friend of mine who's also a pastor. And I said, bro, what's going on here? Because this has never happened. Am I
Mm-hmm.
losing it, or what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
And so he began to ask me, he said, well, are you being obedient to what the Spirit's telling you to do?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, yes, I am. I said, well, what does this mean? And he shared with me, he said that this is a time in life, a time and season in your life where you're being called to be obedient, because the Lord has something he wants to say through you, and truly in spite of me as
Mm-hmm.
well. And so he said, just be open and just be obedient.
Yes.
And so I said, okay, I'm going to follow that. I don't understand what's going on. But I've also come to realize sometimes that when God is taking you into a
Mm-hmm.
new arena, it's not entirely necessary that we understand why,
Right.
but we just need to trust him to know that he knows what's going on, even if we don't.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm also convinced that if we knew exactly what was going on, there's a good chance we mess it up. At least I can say that for me. Okay.
Right.
So
You
I got toward the end of 2015,
mm-hmm.
and so I remember I was sitting back, and a friend of mine said, "Well, why don't you write for a Christian blog?" And I kind of looked at her like, "Well, I'm not a writer." And she said, "Well, what do you call this?" I said, yeah, I guess it is writing." And so she said, "Apply for some Christian blogs." And so I wound up around November of 2015, and I sent out some of my essays that I had written to blogs all across the world. I think I sent out about 10 or 15, and they all said no. So I said, okay, I've got one more that I'm going to send out. I'm already conditioned mentally to hear no, and then I figure I can close that chapter and go on to what I really want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I sent an essay as a sample, Pastor, over to a website over in Singapore. It's called Christian Blessings. And so I sent this over to her, and then the editor wrote me back the next day. She emailed me. She said, "Alan, I like this, so why don't you write for me every week?"
Wow.
I was like, "Oh, wait. I don't know about every week." Okay. I said, I've never done anything like this. I said, "How about once a month?" And so she said, "Okay, I'll settle for once a month." And she said, "Here's your first assignment. For January 2016, I want you to write something related to the beginning of a new year."
Wow.
And she said it has to be at least 300 words.
Mm-hmm.
And Pastor, when she said it has to be 300 words, I just about passed out because I thought, I cannot do 300 words. There's just no way.
Yeah.
And so I was just turning over my mind over and over again. I said, what am I going to write about? Because I have no clue. And I'll never forget, around about a day or so before Christmas 2015, I was driving somewhere and they were playing the song on the radio, Old Lang Syne. And part of that lyric, and again, I'm tying back to my lyrical side, part of the lyrics in that song, Pastor, talking about will old acquaintances be forgotten. If you heard that song. And so I began to turn it over in my mind. The Lord said, okay, this is what I want you to write about for January 2016. And so my first blog post for Christian Blessing in 2016 was called Old Acquaintances. And the gist of that is about how we go into a new year. What are the things that we say that are old acquaintances that we really want to get rid of? Is it something like, say, fear, which is what I had to get over because of my hesitancy and my lacking faith in terms of trusting the Lord to lead me where He wanted me to go? Or is there an old acquaintance of, say, self-doubt that you have? And so I kind of wrote that first essay in that vein, talking about each of us going into the beginning of a new year. We have old acquaintances that we want to get rid of, but are we going to be willing to commit to doing that? Because if we do, we're going to wind up being much better. And so that wound up being my first essay in 2016, January, for Christian Blessings. And it's gone well because I've been writing for them now for about 5 years. So I'm just completing the 5-year mark right now. So I'm very blessed to say that. And so I just continued to write for them up through 2016. And by this time, Pastor, I compiled about 35 short essays. Now, the content in my book, if you've had a chance to just kind of glance through them, they're very conversational. My essays are like devotionals or just like inspirational. They're very short. They're maybe about 2 or 3 pages, but they're very practical, very down to earth. And so I remember when I compiled about 35 of them for my first book, I was thinking, well, what do I do now? And so this friend said, well, why don't you put them in a book and sell your book? Pastor, I had no idea how to do that. I had no clue.
Wow.
And so I was like, okay, Lord, you got to give me an answer because I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where to look. And as it turned out, I belong to a community called Fiverr, if you've never heard of that. Fiverr is an internet community where they have people with all kinds of skills and talents that you can network with, and they can do just about anything. And so I went into Fiverr. I'll never forget, it was February 2017. And so I put out a request. I said, can somebody help me like format this and edit it?
Uh,
And can you help me get it on Amazon? Excuse me. And I'll never forget, I sent out that request just like now on a Friday night. And I thought, okay, it's February 2017, so maybe I'll get a response by November or December of 2017.
mm-hmm.
I'm thinking in my humanness that this is how it's going to go. And to my absolute shock, I came back home the next day after running errands, and I had like 35 people that responded that said they wanted to work with me on my book.
Wow.
That threw me for a loop because I was thinking, okay, Lord, how do I identify the person that I want to work with? But I kind of went through it, did my due diligence, and I wound up actually through Fiverr working with a young lady who's in South Africa.
Wow.
And so we did everything through the internet. I sent her my manuscript. She did all the editing and the formatting, and she got it ready for release. And I released my first book, Here I Am, Lord, in May of 2017.
Yeah,
And
speaking of Africa, we have some guests all the way out of Africa, Abuja, Nigeria.
all right,
That's watching on tonight, and so many that are watching on tonight. They're posting in the chat in our chat room, and yeah, so we're so happy to have them come and join us.
absolutely.
And tell when you speak of listening to the still voice of God speak to you, how important is it for individuals to listen to that still voice in the spirit, of course, to listen to that still voice and ask God to lead and guide you, or to lead and guide them through their experience? Because God, He works in mysterious ways. He'll put peoples in your life that will guide you to your destiny.
Exactly. That is so important because I know that's from Psalm 46, I think 46:10 or 46:1. Forgive me if I don't have the exact right.
Mhm.
But the importance of that is God has the ability, only He has the ability to speak that voice that's audible in your spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And you will know when it is. But I think it's important too, Pastor, that what we do as well, particularly in times like this with technology and everything, a lot of times you've got to block everything else out and make sure you really tune into what their voice is saying. And I have found in my experience, just speaking for me, that it's almost been like this nudging in my spirit that says, go left, don't go right.
All
But
right.
the key to me is, and I think this applies for all of us, are we going to listen and be obedient? I know scripture talks about, you know better than I do, we can't just be hearers of the word. We've got to
Yeah,
be
the
doers.
doers. And you preaching my sermon. You preaching my sermon. All right. Yes. And so you wrote. This is your first or second book?
Here I Am, Lord is the first book, which I released in 2017.
Okay.
And so, be totally honest with everybody listening, when I released that book, I remember the night I saw it on Amazon, and I just stared at it for about 5 minutes or so.
Mm-hmm.
And I just stared at it, Pastor, because I could not believe this has happened. I was thinking to myself, how could this have happened to somebody who has no clue what he's doing?
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if grammatically it's correct, if I have the right punctuations and all of that. Pastor, I had no clue.
Right.
But I was really, at that moment, just thinking, you know what, God? You are just too deep sometimes. You are just, I was just shaking my head when I looked at my book because I just said, there's no way I could have done this on my own. And like you just said, He led me to people who were there to encourage me and to tell me, yes, I can. And I'm convinced that, as you said, and I think of this in terms of the ram in the bush. When you're going in life and you're going along a pathway, there are going to be rams in the bush that are there for a time and season just for you.
Right.
Who are going to speak a word of encouragement to you and say to you exactly what you need to hear at the exact moment that keeps you moving along that pathway. And so that's how it was when I did my first book. And when I finished up with that, I said, okay, Lord, well, I think we got that done because now I really want to go back to my real love, which is to do my music and to do the lyrics for the music. Now,
Uh-huh.
I'm saying that, Pastor, in my humanness, in terms of I pretend like I'm going to tell God what it is that I want to do. Okay? So you would think at 62 years old at that time, I would have figured it out. I'm a little slow on the uptake sometimes. Okay, I'm just going to confess right now. But the Lord said, no, we're not through yet. We've got another book that we need to do.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, come on, God, I don't really have time for this. Like I'm arguing with God like I'm going to win, right? I don't know why I was thinking that. But anyway, I'm just grateful for the fact that all my complaining and my whining, he just ignored me. He said, nope, I've got work for you to do.
All right.
And so from 2017 up through 2018, I continued to write, not just for Christian Blessings over in Singapore, but I continued to compile the material for my second book, which is the best selling book called In the Spirit Intended.
Hmm.
And I released that book in the summer of 2019. And by July of 2019, I'm blessed to say that it did make the bestseller list for that particular month. So
All
I'm
right.
again, I just continue to shake my head because I'm just thinking, you know what, Lord, I am by definition an
Right.
ordinary person. I can say that about myself, but I've come to realize, and this applies to all of us, it is a cliche that we've heard, Pastor, but it's a cliche because it's true that God will use ordinary people to do extraordinary things. The
Hmm.
extraordinariness of what I've accomplished is not because of me, it's because of me being obedient and following what thus said the Lord. And so I say to everybody who's listening, don't short sell yourself because if God has a purpose for you, it's for you and it's for you only. And He's going to equip you with what you need to get from A to Z because nobody can do it better than Him.
So many people are going through right now during these times of this COVID-19, this political race that's going on, this race war, all these things that happen, famines in the land. Now, you write about inspiration in your book, and through the Spirit of God. Give us a taste of what the reader can expect when they read your book.
When they read my book, what they're going to find are some short essays that are very reflective, they're very thought provoking, and I think they're very realistic and they're relatable.
Mm-hmm.
Just to give you an example, from my second book, one of my favorite chapters is called A Square Peg.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that the Lord had me to write A Square Peg was a reflective moment in time where I was that person, as we all have been, Pastor,
Mm-hmm.
where what we were trying to do was to fit in.
Right.
We were trying to do what it is we thought we were needed to do, or we felt like it was the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the point I'm making in A Square Peg is the fact that God, in essence, is not calling us to fit in, He's calling us to stand out.
That's right.
And in those moments of standing out, you're going to be that square peg that doesn't fit into that round hole. But it's not about that round hole. It's about you standing out, and you will be considered peculiar. But we know that if we answer our calling according to His Spirit, we are a peculiar people. That's just the reality of
That,
how things go.
that's right.
So that's one of my favorite chapters in there. I think another one is Footprints in the Sand. We've all seen that poster of the footprints in the sand. And I really, the Lord had me to write that one in terms of sometimes, and this applies now as much as anything. Yes, we're going through an awful lot. No one can deny that. And there doesn't seem to be a lot to look forward to if we listen to the humanness of what comes on through the internet, through the news, and everything like that. But the point I was making, and the Lord had me to make in footprints in the sand, is the fact that a lot of times what we may need to do is just kind of stop and just kind of look back, Pastor, and you're going to see those footprints in the sand
Mm-hmm.
where the Lord has been with you, or as the poem says, sometimes you're only going to see one set of footprints, and those were His. Don't get it twisted, they weren't ours.
That's
Okay?
right.
So those were His footprints, and He carried us when we didn't have the strength to take another step. And that's just keeping it real.
And we're getting so many comments out here. We have, yes, Lord, God will use ordinary people to do extraordinary things, Martin Quarti. And also, we have watching live from Nigeria. And we're getting so many people giving us the likes they love.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so, yeah, definitely. And tell us something. A lot of times, let's use for this example. You have people that are in the workplace now, and they are going through, these different scenarios, and maybe their boss says, "Okay, we need you to work in this particular area over here instead of where you're comfortable at." How would an individual deal with something like that?
Well, I think that's reflective of life in a lot of situations because each of us have our own comfort zone. And we have a comfort zone and we're just going to stay there as long as we can. But the boss telling you that that's just really a microcosm of what life really is all about. Because we're being called to be out of a comfort zone,
Mm-hmm.
which means you've got to take steps in a whole new direction. And yes, it's going to be scary, it's going to be nerve wracking. But at the same time, I think it's important to keep in mind that the position that you were in order to reach a certain level of comfort, you had to grow into that. That represented something new when you first began it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you made it through that, then chances are you have what's inside you to continue to move forward into a whole new arena. Because you have it within you, if you got there to begin with, there's a good chance you're going to make it to the next step as well. You're going to be strong in your faith and not let the fear kind of back you into a corner because fear is real, whether we want to admit it or not. But
Mm-hmm.
how are we going to deal with it? Are we going to let it back us in the corner? Or are we going to just say, you know what, I've got to plow through and I'm not going to let this stop me no matter what?
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah, we're just going over some scenarios here for you that your book brings out. Is a reflection, of things that you've gone through, or family members have gone through, or something that someone has gone through in their life span. And I think it's you can reflect off of those writings, and that's one thing I think that your book reflects on in your writings, and so that's great. One of the things that struck me with the book is that it's not only for men, it's
No,
for women or individual.
yes.
Yes.
I didn't write this book. Let me take that back. The Lord did not have me to write this book
Mm-hmm.
in terms of being gender specific. So that's not what it's all about. It was about me sharing my reflections, being what God was telling me to do, that are going to be identifiable for all of us on a
Mm-hmm.
daily basis. The feedback I've gotten in terms of people liking what I've written has come from men, from young people to people my age and older. And so they're saying what it does for them is it just speaks to their heart and they said it's down to earth and it's identifiable.
Right.
Because one thing we can say without question is trouble and difficulty does not discriminate. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't care if you're a man or a woman, young or old, it's going to come for us. It does every day. How are we going to deal with that? What is the process that we're going to undertake to get us through those daily challenges? Because every day it's going to be something, like my mother said. That's just the reality of what life brings to the table, Pastor.
Right. Yes.
That's not changing.
Now, when we talk about your book, I know so many of our viewers and listeners out there have so many questions. Uh, Give us some scenarios that you're asked about your book.
I think one of the immediate scenarios that everybody asks me about is they are making the assumption that this was something that I studied in college. This was something that I've had a lot of years of training on and
Mm-hmm.
of that nature. And
Right.
so I'm very flattered, Pastor, when they say that. But what I immediately convey to them is the fact that no, there was no formal training here.
Right.
My background is not like as an English literature major or language art major or something like that. My background was in business administration in terms of my college degree. So I had no formal training doing this. And so people kind of looked at me like, well, okay, how did you go from there to this? And so I explained to them, you're asking me a question in the natural.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the natural, there's no logical progression from my background
Mm-hmm.
to being a two-time author. The natural progression of that in my humanness does not make sense. It cannot happen. And so what I've explained to them is this was really me just being obedient to what God called me to do. And he was speaking into my spirit, and I was just being obedient. Now, I've had people kind of look at me like, well, okay, I don't quite understand. And it's hard to articulate sometimes how God will move in your life because words sometimes don't necessarily convey
Mm-hmm.
the real meaning or the real impact. But as we knew growing up in church, sometimes you just know
Yeah.
that this is what it's all about. And so that's what I've had to share with people saying, I just did what God called me to do. I mean, if you want some kind of deep, philosophical, strongly worded explanation that gets into the deep layers of psychology, I'm
Yeah.
not that deep. Okay? I'm just keeping it real. All I
Yes.
did was just be obedient and I did what God called me to do. That's
Right.
it. That's it.
That's right. Hey, we're going to open up our phone lines. The telephone number is 860-461-7577, 860-461-7577. If you have a question that you would like to ask Mr. Black, yes, he's here, right here, live. He's out here to answer any of your questions. Alan T. Black, best-selling Christian author, international Christian blogger, and song lyricist. I tell you, if you've got a question that have not been answered for you, you need to give us a call here, and Mr. Black is here to give you an insight from his book, his new book. All right, and so give us a call here, 860-461-7577. And that's his book right there. Yes, In the Spirit Intended. Thank you. And yeah, he's here with us. And so you want to make sure you give us a call here at the station. We are live right here on the Vnetwork Radio, 860-461-7577. Don't let it be your last chance to call in. Now, people all over the world, I tell you, they spend thousands and thousands on seminars and different ministries. They spend money, 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 money. And here it is. We've got an international author, best-selling author here, and you don't want to wait to get your question in. All right, all right, all right. Lakia's on the line there. They'll wait till at the very end to call. Yeah,
Well, that's how it is. They may have some questions. They're trying to think of some different things, but
yeah,
Kia is kind of doing that. I would just say to our listeners this evening that don't be afraid. Because one thing I have learned through this experience is that it kind of goes back, Pastor, to something that I've learned growing up. It's taken me a while to realize it, but now in this time and season, I really understand. And that's something I used to hear growing up in the church that God does not call the qualified.
mm-hmm.
He doesn't call the qualified because he will qualify those that he calls.
That's right.
And so I'm a living witness to that in terms of somebody to reach the point of doing two books. And amazingly, I already finished the manuscript for a third book for next year. So
Mm-hmm.
by this time next year, Lord willing, I will have my third book out.
All
And
right.
each of those books is just a testament to me not being hard headed and me not thinking in the natural, but just saying, okay, Lord, here I am, Lord, take me. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really the reason I titled my first book, Here I Am, Lord, because I was fighting with the Lord in terms of what He called me to do with the first book, Pastor. And then at some point, I just did this. I said, okay, I give up. Here I am, Lord. What do you want me to do? And that's what led to the title for the first book, Here I Am, Lord. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm a living witness that being willing to step up and to answer your call.
That's right.
You
That's
are
right.
going to have challenges. It's going to be difficult, and it may not go the way you want it to. But
Mm-hmm.
nonetheless, you want to know that you tried, that you did not allow your fear and your inhibitions hold you back. I'm reminding of the story that my father always talked about with Peter, when Jesus called him out of the boat onto the water,
Mm-hmm.
and Peter sank. But the flip
Mm-hmm.
side of that, my father taught me, is the fact that Peter did get out of the boat. He was willing to try to walk on the water,
Right.
and yes, he failed, but guess what? He
Mm-hmm.
got back up. And my father also pointed out the fact that none of the other disciples got out. Did you ever think about that?
Mm-hmm.
And so he taught me one thing. He said, you know what? You can't walk on the water if you don't get out of the boat.
That's right. That's right.
And so I think that's part of my testimony here is that don't be afraid to get out of the boat. Yeah, you might sink a little bit, splash around, but you know what? It's still going to be okay because if God has brought you to that point, He's going to bring you through where He needs you to go. And so that would be what I would encourage our listeners to keep in mind that if I could do this, a guy with a business education background, no writing experience outside of being a lyricist, and reach this point, then it shows that God can do something special in each and every one of us. So, hey, I'm still kind of shaking my head looking at both of my books like, how did this happen? How did
Yeah.
this happen? I still can't believe it, even to this very second.
One of the things that I know that God, He leads His people. Anytime that you love a certain thing, and you say, hey, and God turns that thing around and
Mm-hmm.
brings you into the opposite direction. He always brings you back to say, hey, I'm listening at you.
Mm-hmm.
Give you
Oh,
a
yeah.
taste to say, okay,
Oh, yeah.
God is even talking right now through this program here, and He's speaking. I'm quite sure to you. Said, I know I'm gonna bring you on the radio network so that you can be able to reach out people. You love music.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm gonna just bring you back. I hear what you're talking about. I hear what you're saying, but I'm gonna just give you a little taste and let you get out here on the radio and let the people know on the radio that your love of music. And so, and when I read your book and I listen to your testimony, I'm pretty much the same way. I came into music. I started out singing in gospel groups, into the street bands when I
Okay.
was
All right.
14, 15 years old. And then playing in church. Yeah, so I come from a music background and understand, the voice and the call from God. And, sometimes you may want to get back over into the other arena, but and nudge to get back on over there. Yes, so it's great. People face challenges in this world through many different circumstances. Is there anything in the book that you can inspire our listeners that's facing challenges at this time?
I think in terms of the challenges that you face, one of the chapters, chapter 21 in the second book, is called Overcomer. And the Lord had me to write that in the vein that each of us, like you said, Pastor, are going to have challenges and we're going to have mountains that we're going to have to climb, but never lose hope and lose sight of the fact that God has placed within each of us, in my opinion, an overcomer spirit. And what I mean by that is He has instilled in our DNA that desire to continue to keep pressing forward so that we don't give in and that we don't just say stop and just throw in the towel.
Mm-hmm.
So when I wrote Overcomer, that's thematically what I was getting to, is because I can look back over the course of my life and see how God has brought me through so many different things.
Mm-hmm.
But if each of us are going to be honest and we're self-reflective, we can look back over the course of our life and see that there's been so many different things that we've overcome because of God's grace and His mercy. And so that's really one of my chapters that I kind of go to, because I like that in terms of thematically, we all have an overcomer spirit in us. How are we going to tap into it when things get really tough? And we're in times right now, let's keep it real, where it's difficult. Everything around us seems to be upside down,
Mm-hmm.
but we can just never lose sight of the fact that He's overcome everything anyway to begin
Mm-hmm.
with. So He's instilled in us that same type of DNA. How do we tap into that to get us through these difficult days that we're dealing with right now?
Okay, we have one other note here. People try to live up to the Joneses. With the money, the fine homes, fancy cars, all these different things. Even church folk, they envy what another person is wearing. Whether this person wear a nice suit, they say, "Oh, I want to have that a nicer suit."
Mm-hmm.
If the pastor got a house, they say we want a bigger house than the
Yes,
pastor.
we do.
Or
Yes, we
if
do.
the if they say we want a nice car, and they see the pastor driving a nice
Yes, sir.
car, Toyota car, they want a Cadillac. So, what do you have in the book that can inspire a person?
Actually, in my first book, Here I Am, Lord, I really kind of spoke to that issue. One chapter in that book, Here I Am, Lord, is called A Daily Blessing.
Mm-hmm.
And the essence of that particular essay in my first book talks about the fact that each day we have more blessings than we can really give an account for.
Mm-hmm.
Just the fact that you wake up in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
that's a blessing. But it's so easy to take those things for granted, because we all do. I know I have down through the years. But when the Lord had me to write A Daily Blessing for the first book, what He wanted me to convey was the fact that sometimes maybe you just need to stop and kind of smell the roses, as they say, smell the
Mm-hmm.
flowers, and really come to appreciate the things that you've been blessed with.
Mm-hmm.
Because maybe you don't have the finest car, but let's be real about it. Is your car getting you from A to B okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because you know what? There are some people that catch the bus and walk. So it's important sometimes for us just to be grateful and thank God for what we have. I go to a facility 3 days a week where I take my sister to dialysis.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've seen people dealing with so many different medical conditions Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And so what it says to me is that sometimes when I come out of there, a lot of times when I come out of there, I say to myself, the aches and pains that I have,
Mm-hmm.
Pastor, they're not that bad.
Right.
They're not that bad, because there's somebody out there who's dealing with something far worse than anything that you have. And I'm also mindful of the fact that some of the very things that you have that you don't think are good enough,
Mm-hmm.
those are the very things that somebody else would give anything else to have. And that's just the reality of how life works. So I kind of spoke about that in the first book, Here I Am, Lord, talking about a daily blessing. Because sometimes we just need to really just stop and just thank God for what we have.
That's right.
Because none of us really have a lot that we want for. We want for all kinds of different things. but let's be grateful for the things that we have, which are the things that we need. Because
You know,
needs and wants have nothing to do with each other. They're
mm,
separate as day and night.
we talk about things that people go through, and one of the common things is that jealousy. We know that jealousy is crueler than the grave,
Hmm.
and you have folk that's jealous of what you have, or jealous of what you're doing, and jealous of
Exactly.
uh, how can overcoming that individual and keeping your focus. How can someone be able to do that?
I think that's important because what you want to do is to more or less nip that in the bud. I mean, you're seeing, like you just alluded to a few minutes ago, somebody's got a better car than you.
Mm-hmm.
And so the human tendency to say, well, who are they? Because I'm better than they are anyway. But we really have to squash that immediately, I think, and we have to say, you know what? That person got to where they are, and you want to be happy for them. Now, that's not going to be easy, but you want to make a point to try to get out of self
Mm-hmm.
as much as possible. Because self, in terms of the human psyche, is always going to be selfish. It's always going to be self serving. And so that's something that we can only overcome
Mm-hmm.
through the daily word in terms that spirit of the Lord speaking to us on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
Because the world would have us think that we need to be envious or jealous or hateful of somebody else who has more than what we have.
Mm-hmm.
And we really don't know what they have, what did they go through to get it. And oh, by the way, Pastor, are they really happy with it?
That's right.
Because with bigger things come bigger responsibilities and sometimes
Mm-hmm.
bigger problems.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of keep yourself in check and say, you know what? I'm not going to let that emotion or that spirit of jealousy enter into my heart. Because once it does, it wants to take root. It's not going anywhere unless you force it out.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, all it's going to do is just make you bitter and angry, and it just festers away at you and just eats away at you, and nothing good comes out of that.
Mm-hmm. Do you think in the near future for your books, are you going to present any audio books for your books?
Yes, the third book, which I finished the manuscript for back in April, that's my next goal is to do an audio book.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really excited about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm even more excited about the fact that I was coming back with my sister from dialysis one day, and I
Mm-hmm.
was sharing with her that I want to do an audio book, and she just blew me out of the water. She said, well, can I do the voice for it? And I was like, oh man, I was so happy, Pastor.
You gotta listen to that still voice.
Oh man, I was like, she really has no idea how
uh,
happy I was. I was literally close to tears when she said that because I was like,
mm-hmm.
that would be a dream come true if she could do the audio, and she's going to do the audio for the third book.
All right.
Both of my parents have gone on to be with the Lord a few years ago, and
Mm-hmm.
I know that that would make both of them so happy, Pastor. I
Yes.
am so pumped up for her to do the audio on this. I'm
Mm-hmm.
more excited about her doing the audio than the book itself releasing. I'm just being
Right.
real. That's my real excitement for my
Mm.
third.
What was the highlight moment of your writings? What did you learn from your writings, and the highlight points that you learned from your writing? Because of course, your writing is a reflection of what you've been through, what you're going to go through, and what you've seen. Um, what are some of the highlight points that you've learned?
I think the biggest highlight for me has just been the accomplishment of getting from A to B. I know that
Mm-hmm.
might seem like a generic response, but the reason I'm saying that, Pastor, is because in starting out, I was thinking there was just no way I could do this. So with
Mm-hmm.
each essay that I've been able to write, it's kind of strengthened my faith in terms of what God's calling me to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one highlight immediately was when the first book came out, because like I shared earlier, just to see it on Amazon was really mind blowing.
Mm-hmm.
And then last summer, the next highlight was when I was recognized as the best selling author. And I
Mm-hmm.
I just shook my head. I was like, "This is this for real?" I mean, that was just amazing. And so those have been the two biggest highlights for me from the writing side of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I take no credit for that because I know it's all the work of God. All
Yes.
I was just a vessel.
All
That's
right. All
all
right.
I was. I'm just being real about it, just a vessel.
If those of you that would like to purchase a book, how would they be able to purchase your book to get your book?
They can go to my website, which is Alan T. Black, which is scrolling on the bottom of the screen here for StreamYard. And it's ALAN, the letter T, like in Theodore, black.com. So it's alantblack.com.
All
They can
right.
go to the website and there'll be information about both books. They'll see some pictures and things of different things that I've been able to do with my books here locally and across the country. And so that's where they can get more information. I've been very fortunate in terms of this growing and having my social media person, Martine Corte,
Mm-hmm.
and she has been instrumental in terms of getting me from A to C social media wise. Now she'll tell you I'm still a dinosaur when it comes to social media, but she has been incredibly patient and supportive, teaching a 65-year-old man how to use Facebook. And I'm still learning about this Instagram stuff. I don't know what it means, but she's an example of somebody the Lord has placed in my pathway to kind of be there
Yes.
for me. So if they go to the website, they will see both books and information about Alan T. Black as the author. And so my attitude has been for everybody, Pastor, who has purchased the book, I consider it an incredible honor that they would do so. I'm still kind of getting used to the fact that people see me and they say, "Hey, will you sign my book?" And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
"You want me to sign your book?" And they're like, "Yeah, you're an author. You're famous."
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, "Well, I'm not famous. I'm an author, yes, but I'm still just me."
Yes.
But even the part of doing a book signing was kind of strange because I'm like, well, these people locally have known me since I was a kid, so why are they acting different? And so I'm still
Mm-hmm.
processing a lot of that. So, but I understand now that's a part of the transformation
Mm-hmm.
that God has taken me through. I kind of allude to transformation in the second book called Metamorphosis in chapter 16, which talks about how each of us are going through a changing process and how you reach a certain level and then you now a whole different person from what you were before.
Mm-hmm.
And so I talk about that. I entitled that one Metamorphosis, you're talking about the changes that the Lord will bring us through each and every day because we're always changing and we're always evolving. And hopefully we're evolving in a manner which is positive and that is pleasing to God Himself.
Do you foresee any book clubs coming up? You know, the book clubs where you get all writers, people that love listening to your book and reading your book. Are you planning to do that? Something like that?
Oh, I think so. It'll be something that honestly, Martine and I will work on. We'll start getting that together. So we're
Mm-hmm.
looking into that. I mean, she is dynamic in terms of a bigger vision because she's already written a book and she's a best-selling author herself. So
Okay.
I'm looking into that as well for, say, 2021, in addition to the audiobook and the release of, say, the third book. She's also pushed me into doing, like, say, a study guide for the second book, which we're going to release around Thanksgiving.
All right.
And I was told that I should do a study guide because people have read the second book and they said, well, why, there are some questions that we like to use in terms of, say, like a study group or like a
Mm-hmm.
Bible study group. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
working on that right now. She and I are working on that. And then we're going to do a study guide for the third book as well, in addition to the audio book. So I'm really of the opinion of just being obedient and being open
Mm-hmm.
and just looking into different avenues. And it's scary because,
Mm-hmm.
again, I come from an era where I had to do my term papers in college on a typewriter, and most of the audience has no idea what a typewriter is, okay? Or I had to do my research at the library
Yeah.
on those index cards in those rooms way up in
Mhm.
the ceiling, whatever.
Yeah.
You get the research there. You didn't have the internet back in the day, so
That's right.
it's a challenge. I think you know what I'm talking about,
Oh
Pastor. Not
yeah. Oh yeah.
doing anything, but
Yeah.
to see what that time period was then as to where it is now,
Now that's right.
it's amazing the changes in terms of technology and everything. So I'm trying to be open to that.
Uh
It's scary for somebody that's 65 years old, but I'm not going to let that fear hold me back, and I've got to keep pressing on and doing what thus says the Lord. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
And one of the things that I would love, and if you are able to do that at least once a month, to have a recording and MP3 and just send it over to me, so that we can present to our listeners on the V Network Radio. We have listeners all over the world, for inspiration, motivation, and that's one of our things that we have here. We would like to give inspiration and motivation to people because, like I say, we have listeners and people that just love music and love to listen to inspiration. So that they can go through and come out as pure gold. You never know what you've been through, but what they've been through, they might see the things that you've gone through and become overcomers. So yeah, definitely. If you have time, send us that
Oh, I
MP3.
will. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I'll have Martine help me out with that because actually what I'd like to do is I can send you an MP3 like once a month or something. I might just read you one of the chapters from the book if you're okay with that, and just share
Yes.
it with the listeners and everything. So
Yes.
I might get with Martine for the technology side of that. The talking and the reading I can do, but I'll say Martine, okay, how do I do this? But I would love to do that because my
Yes.
attitude, Pastor, is share what the Lord has blessed me to be able to do
Yes.
because you
Yes.
never know whose heart is going to touch and what
Mm-hmm.
impact you could have on somebody's life. And that's what it's really all about.
Yeah. Well, keep us informed of what you're doing and what you're about to do. When I tell you, we have Mr. Alan T. Black, best-selling Christian author, international Christian blogger, and song lyricist. Right here, he has a website, Alan T. Black.com, and you can go out there and get all the new information that is available out there, new technology information about his books and what he's planning on doing for future. And he's coming out with a new book. And let's see what the title is going to be. Can you give us a little hint?
Not yet.
No.
The Lord spoke to my heart. I have an
All right.
idea, and Martine and I are kind of kicking around some ideas, but
Uh,
it will be the manuscript is done. We've got some administrative things we need to do, but I promise you when it's ready,
all right.
I'm gonna give you the inside scoop. Okay, I got you, Doc. Don't worry about it. Okay,
You'll hear it first here on the V Network Radio.
yeah, we're gonna break it off. We're gonna break it off. Man.
All right. Yeah, it's a pleasure having you. Lakia, do you have any questions for the? Now, Lakia, she's here. She's a little shy, camera shy, and she has a magazine. And what's the name of your magazine?
Mixed Race Love magazine.
Mixed Race Love magazine, and it goes all over the country. All over the country. And she's an inspired writer. She said, "Congratulations."
Congratulations.
Yeah. And so she's just been being inspired over here, listening in on tips that you've given as a writer. If you had one more tip you can give to her as a writer, what would you do? Because I know she's itching to ask that question.
I think the one thing that I would say, don't look at this as being a process that you do alone.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I have learned in terms of my collaborative background in music, there is power in collaboration. What collaboration comes down to is your willingness to reach out and to connect to people who are in a position that you can work with and work in conjunction with.
Mm-hmm.
Because together then you have the capacity to get from A to B.
Right.
I would not have gotten to this point without a collaborative commitment on my part.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to connect with other people who said, okay, let's do this in joint ventures mode, and they go from A to B to C. So I would say to her and to everybody, there's power in collaboration, because what you then tap into is a different source of energy and information that ultimately is going to benefit both of you to get you from A to B. And getting from A to B is the goal. Don't think you have to do it alone. And also, too, and this stands without saying, you're going to come across people who are going to tell you you can't do it. And I'm just going to keep it real. I had people tell me with my first book, you can't do that, it can't be done. I just closed my ear and I said, no, you know what? God didn't bring me this far for me to just stop and just throw up my hands and walk away. So you're going to have the Doubting Thomases, and we know who they are. We all do. You just respectfully say, well, I appreciate your opinion, but you know what? I got work to do.
Mm-hmm.
I have a calling I have to answer, and I'm not going to let anything stop me. I've got to do what I've been called to do.
All
so
right.
I would say to her, that's really what it's all about. It comes down to what I've learned, Pastor, the intangibles. The talent that you have is one thing, but what are the intangibles? Intangibles are commitment, it's passion, it's resiliency, it's determination. Those are the intangibles that take us from the ordinary to extraordinary. That's what I've learned in 65 years. Took me too long to learn it, but I finally figured a light finally went on that, oh, my dad was right. It's the intangibles. My mother tried to tell me, but I was hard-headed. I thought I knew everything. It turned out I didn't know nothing. Okay, but I learned the hard way. So that would be what I would say. Bring into the focus and bring to the table your intangibles, because that's what's going to take you to where you want to go.
All right, wonderful. Hey, we want to take this opportunity to thank you once again, and we look forward to working with you and listening to your broadcast. Like I said, we do inspirational spoken word, and we'd love to have you once a month, even once a year.
Yes. I'll make it at least once a month. Like I said, Martina, I will figure out something. She's listening.
Yeah.
I've already given her a new assignment, whether she likes it or not.
All right.
We're going to make it happen.
All right, yeah. Now we're going to be featuring our founder, Dr. Bradford Howard Jr., who's in Florida right now, and we're going to be creating a magazine. And I think what we're going to do is feature you and your book in that magazine.
I'm very honored. Wow.
Right now, he's setting up as a newsletter, and I've got to get that information in by October. So what I'll do is I'll forward him your copy of your information that you sent me, your bio.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and then I'll have him reach out to you.
Thank you. I am so honored. Yeah, and that just goes to show you never know who God's going to send your way. I'm like, wow, God, you are just too deep sometimes. I just shake my head sometimes. I'm just saying, God, I don't know why you're doing it, like the songwriter said, but I just want you to keep on doing it, bro. Okay? Just keep doing what you do.
All right. With that, without further ado, hey, thank you all for tuning in. Hey, join with us on tomorrow. We're going to have Mr. Lafayette Brown here with us all the way from Chicago, Illinois at 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it's 3 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. And we're going to be on for an interview segment with Mr. Lafayette Brown. Now, he has a workout CD. If you want to make sure, if you are out there doing your workout, you're in the house doing your workout, some people pray and do their workout. So wherever you are and you want your workout, I'm telling you, this CD is for you. Tune in tomorrow as we bring to you some good gospel music by Mr. Lafayette Brown, all the way from Chicago, Illinois. And don't forget, 12 noon, we'll have Joy Harper, Evangelist Joy Harper, all the way out of Washington, D.C., bringing to you the ministries at 12 noon right here on the Vnetwork Radio, bringing you music anytime, anywhere. We'll be playing 24 hours of gospel music this whole entire weekend, and just continue to tune in. All right, thank you, and God bless you all. God bless.
Thank you. God bless.